John, good to see you. How are you?
Doing fine. Good afternoon.
It's been a while since our last interview. How long ago was it? Do you remember?
It's almost 2 years ago, and we were
Wow.
talking about nickel and how the world is going to run out of nickel.
And you own part of a nickel mine, right? Was that correct?
Yes, we acquired at that time almost 3 years ago one of the largest open pit nickel sulfide project in Canada.
And what's happening with that?
Unfortunately, we had to part ways and sell the project to the First Nations of which the project was situated.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Probably, as you well aware, there is a NGO movement in making the world more equitable, and the First Nations in Canada being given hundreds of millions of dollars by the federal government, and some of these First Nations choose to use that money to acquire some of the natural resources that are in their land. So they were like, well, John, we appreciate your making us aware of the Green Initiative, and we got about $300 million sitting in our treasury. You are a little junior company, and why don't we part ways? So we had to take a haircut, and at least I'm glad at least it goes at least the buyer of the project, right, goes to its roots, and that is part of I had to share with some of the excitement development in the company today. We've taken use that proceeds and did a bit of self-reflection and did a bit more market research on battery tech and came out with this fluorspar angle, fluoride angle of which there's a lot to talk about fluoride and as well, Sam, being a fan of your channel, I think there's so much advance in very different fields, especially regarding Tesla, battery tech, energy storage, and just the pace of which the EVs have advanced, and also as well as robotaxis.
Mm.
All of these are very interesting topics of interest.
You're saying that fluorspar is your new product. It's
Yes,
it's a form of fluoride and you use that in batteries. Is that correct?
I think if we just step back for a minute and look at the battery tech, right?
Mm.
You have a battery that's got an anode and a cathode, and then you've got this medium, which up till now is mostly lithium. When you're discharging the battery, basically you have the negative charge. That's lithium carbide sitting on the anode,
Yep.
and the electron gets released from the anode either externally to the electric motors or cell phone, whatever, and the electron then gets recycled on the cathode. And what happens then is the lithium gets then released from the lithium carbide, and because the electron gets consumed, and so the lithium charge is then swing across the batteries to be on the cathode side because the cathode is now increasingly become negatively charged. And then when you are charging the battery, so instead of plugging the electric motors, you're plugging a high voltage device, of which then the electron flows again externally from the cathode back to the anode. And so the way for anode to hold the electron charges as you're charging the battery is the lithium, right? So the lithium is going to swim this time from the cathode back into the anode,
Yep.
and where the lithium carbide then gets formed to hold the charges. Well, the electrolyte, Sam, so lithium hexafluorophosphate. So the negative ion is the fluoride ion that enables the transfer of lithium positive ion between the anode and the cathode as the battery go through the transition. So if you look at the advancement of the battery tech, and obviously, Sam, it's in hindsight that we're having a discussion, is that the anode now is is carbon, it's graphite. And the
Mm.
reason for
Yeah.
graphite is it's got all this lattice sort of structure, it's able to capture the lithium, so it can maximize its energy density. And the cathode started out with well, the characteristics or requirement for the cathode, Sam, is transition metal. It's got to be able to hold on to the charges and release electrons easily. So
Yep.
if you look at the periodic table, the transition metals are the exotics, right? Starting with nickel, manganese, cobalt. So these are the MnCa 11 that we talked about 2 years ago.
Yep.
and these are the most expensive component in the batteries,
Mm.
and that's why Elon Musk was saying that if you look at in terms of economics, you should call these batteries nickel batteries because nickel was the most critical, important, expensive part of the
Expensive
battery
part of the
required.
battery.
Exactly.
Yep.
So more expensive than lithium element. Human ingenuity goes to work and they see, how can we lower the cost? So
Mm.
they started attacking the cathode, and now we thought that nickel may have a 5 to 7 year sort of dominance by 2030. But in less than 2 years, LFP is now the de facto standard, and
Yeah.
so it's all being replaced by the less sort of sexy iron phosphate for the cathode.
Yep.
So now you have the cheap graphite on one end, on the anode you have iron on the cathode side, and now what they're doing, they're attacking the lithium, even though it's abundance. I mean, I think that movement started a couple of years ago when lithium was fairly expensive. Now lithium prices has gone down more than 50% in the last 12 months. I don't think it's going to go bad because, as you well covered, Sam, sodium ion batteries is now, no question about it. Both are the standardized for the energy storage. They're building these mega plants in energy storage batteries in China, as well as some of the lower end car batteries are being replaced with lithium ion batteries. The energy density between tackle used to be, I mean, lithium right now is what, 300 watt hour, and sodium started at 100, and now it's catching up to 60 to 70% in terms of energy density to
Yeah.
lithium batteries. So,
Yeah.
and if you look at the cost of lithium battery going around, started about 500 kilowatt hours 3 years ago when we started this whole wave,
Yep.
and now it's getting down to about 100 to 150, but I think it's going to have a hard time cracking down below the 100. Whereas sodium ion batteries, I think, a couple of years from now, they could be had for the cost of probably $50 a kilowatt hour. All that in mind, I think such a conclusion is both the lithium batteries and sodium battery, the common denominator is the hexafluoride phosphate.
Oh,
That is
right.
electrolyte.
Okay.
That is electrolyte. Hold the charge. Either the charge is lithium or sodium. It's irrespective, and that's why.
Oh,
So if you
sodium
look at,
too.
yeah,
Oh,
sodium too.
okay.
Because if you like the technology, there are two forms of electrolyte. One is oxide-based electrolyte.
Yep.
So, and the other one is fluoride-based electrolyte. And the reason is both are negatively charged and they can hold a positive charge well. The downside for oxide-based electrolyte, as you can imagine by now, is it oxidizes the batteries, and secondly, it heats up oxygen. Oxide-based electrolyte heats up easily, and that's why you're talking about the fire. It's electrolyte that with oxide elements that's catching up the fire, Sam.
So, what percentage of batteries currently worldwide would be using the fluoride in the electrolyte in their batteries?
I will venture to say probably in excess of 80%.
Okay.
In terms of cost differential right now between oxide-based fluoride versus so oxide-based electrolyte versus fluoride-based electrolyte is not significant in terms of the cost.
Yep.
Um, my estimation, based on sort of very primitive calculation, is that if you look at lithium the fluoride electrolyte is LiF6P. So you
Yep.
need six fluorine atoms for one lithium. Same with sodium. And then if you look at the current fluorspar price, it is about 20 cents a pound. So relatively, all things speaking, fluoride electrolyte cost is about 1/10 of the lithium carrying cost. So then, if we were to replace lithium with sodium, and the cost of that go down, say by 40 to 50%,
Yep.
then the fluoride-based electrolyte would still constitute about 20% of the cost relative to the cost of lithium and sodium. So right now it's flying fairly low under the radar. And going back to answering your question is it is a dominant role of the market, and that's why the price of fluorspar went up 50% from 5 years ago.
Right.
And the reason for that is the Chinese, as you know, the emergence of BYD and CATL, right? They were just churning out batteries to no end, and they need a massive amount of fluoride. That is really the single biggest driver on the price of fluoride going on fluorspar going up.
I have had people ask me constantly, hundreds and hundreds of times, how do I get involved in this revolution? How do I profit from it? How do I invest in it? And there's a lot of confusion out there because lithium prices have gone down. There's so much competition with EVs. It's like a race to the bottom with EV prices. Do you invest in an EV
Right.
company? It's dangerous. Do you suggest then that this is an industry people should invest in fluorspar?
Sam, my gut feeling is Forspar, compared to the alternatives, still are fairly attractively priced. So it has a longer longevity, say nickel, because the differential between nickel and iron was so vast. Iron is $100 a ton, whereas nickel is $5 a pound, right? It's night and
Mm.
day. Um, we have to go back to the chemistry one more time because Sam, fluoride, fluorspar, or fluorine is the lightest, most corrosive, and most sort of toxic, and that's very reactive element, and that's why it has that special role in the battery chemistry. So unfortunately, there's not a way for you to participate in the fluorspar market like gold and silver. It's not trading on the COMEX or
Yeah,
on the London Metals Exchange.
yeah,
So the only way for you to sort of get into the fluorspar market is through my purchase of mining company. So I do think that does have a lot of leg to go. It's not just to do with battery tech. Sam, recall that I started critical minerals, studying critical minerals 15 years ago. We got into the vanadium
yeah.
aspect of it 8 years ago. But all set though, 80% of vanadium went to steel rebar, right? So you're not riding on the sort of the vanadium battery per se. And secondly, vanadium is trading at around same price as nickel. So it's always a bit of a challenge. It's relatively expensive in the periodic table. And fluorspar, however, currently about 20% of the fluorspar go to the battery energy storage for batteries in EVs and in large scale battery energy storage. But the other 30% going into, Sam, guess, is nuclear power. Because fluorspar is so reactive. When people talk about nuclear enrichment, as we know, there's a lot of headlines about Iran, how you
Yeah.
enrich a nuclear plant. And just a sort of a uranium 101 is when you talk about enrichment of nuclear of uranium, you're really talking about concentrating what they call the U-235 from the U-238. The majority, 90% of the naturally occurred uranium is in the form of U-238. But it's the U-235 that is fissile, which means fissile means that when you bombard a uranium-235, it will split into smaller elements and the energy get released in the process. U-238 is very inert, it's like plutonium. If we bombard with a new a neutron to 238, it would just take it, right? Like it would take it like a man. So, but in order to enrich uranium 235, concentrate that, the uranium oxide need to be broken down, and the only element can do that is fluorine,
Yeah.
and then you levitate uranium, the uranium 235 to become uranium hexafluoride, which is UF6. So once you get in the gaseous state, you can go through centrifugal or through diffusion to filter out based on density and weight of the 235 from the 238. That's why you get to the nuclear fuel of around 3 to 5% of U-235 from 0.7% of U-235 that's in the uranium oxide. So that's how the nuclear fuel is enriched through uranium. So through fluorine. And then the last sort of couple of main uses for fluorine, about 20-30% is used in high tech aluminum and steel. So imagine when you go into feed molten steels and aluminum into the smelter, you're gonna need fluorine to as a fluxing agent, right? All the impurities and also creating a layer from oxidization by the oxide. So about 20-30% of that is fluorine goes into fluxing for aluminum and steel. Last but not least, Sam, is semiconductors. The high tech, as you know, the technology semiconductor went from 50 nanos today down to 3 nano. All the ASML machines, all the NVIDIA chips, TSMC chips require fluorine to etch the silicon semiconductors. So you're talking photon level, nano level carving of wafers. And used to be something else could do the job, but right now, fluorine is the only candidate. So with also, I think overall, fluorine. You asked me the question is fluorine a good market for investors into the battery tag? I think my answer is there's a lot of room to grow, especially with additional sort of greater market share of EVs, and then also in energy storage, with the solar being the largest energy
Mm,
production increase in the
mm,
last 3 years, and but the struggle they have is how can they convert that energy into baseload. So
yep.
I think all that in mind, Fluorspar occupies a very specialized role, a place irreplaceable role in all these mission critical applications, which is if you look at sort of what Donald Trump was talking about, right? He is imposing steel aluminum tariff on Australian imports. Elon Musk talked about building the first LFP batteries in the United States. TSMC and Nvidia is talking about hundreds of billions dollar investment in the United States to make us semi chip independent. This Fluorspar storyline it almost reminds me identical of rare earth, right? And it's almost to the point where you're running out of fluorspar, which United States sources solely from China and Mexico,
Okay.
that 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 is gonna be sort of lights out before they make that realization that they need to get fluorspar going, and there's zero production of fluorspar out of the United States.
How do they, how is fluorspar mined or how, I don't understand the process. Explain to me how that all works.
Yes. Fluorspar, Sam, naturally occurs as calcium fluoride, CaF2.
Yep.
So what you need to do is you need to mine the fluorspar out of the ground. Unfortunately, fluorspar usually occurs as a very structurally controlled mineralization. So it's not like a Grasberg out of, or like one of the giant mines out of Australia. You can stumble in the middle of a field and you're swimming in the ocean with fluorspar. So
Yeah.
usually these mineralizations are vertical plunge, 1 to 5 meter in thickness, and the calcium fluoride coming out of the ground usually grades around 20 to 50%. Then what you need to do is you need to do what they call the standard flotation, much like when you are mining a zinc or lead sulfide project. So you need to float it. So what happened is you would grind the calcium fluoride out of the ground into it's almost like a very fine particle,
Yep.
um, and then you will float it with chemical agents to separate the fluorspar from the dirt, right, the clay and the other elements, and to the point where when you concentrate it to about 60 to 80% from 20 to 50%, then that's called the met spar grade. So that is good enough for it to be chucked into the aluminum and steel plants. But the calcium fluoride needs to be further upgraded to 95 to 99% for it to be fluor HF, which is hydrofluoride, fluorine gas, for it to be married to electrolyte, and also to be in the semiconductor industry, and also for the batteries. Because the reason for that is, the battery has a lot of chemical technology to it. You can upset the balance of there's different sort of different. I've seen the table, right? The sort of the ingredients has to be very exact down to 0.1% of threshold for
Mm.
the different deleterious elements for it to be fitted into the batteries. So
So when it's
most of the technology is hydro, but it's well known.
so
Yes,
when it's mined, it needs to be refined again to be used in batteries.
yes. It would say refined. I would say it would be concentrated. That's probably the better word. Yes.
John, do you mind just adjusting your camera so I can see you a bit better? Your head's like down the, yeah, perfect. That's better. So I from the data that I've seen, batteries, their use could explode by between 5 and 10,000% over the next 10 years because more countries are suddenly waking up to the fact that batteries in combination with solar are the lowest cost form of energy worldwide. And the price of batteries continues to fall. The guarantees from manufacturers, from battery companies, they're saying 35 years now. We guarantee they'll last for 35 years. And basically the business case scenario means that now it doesn't make any sense to go with any other form of energy. So I think there's tremendous potential here. You're saying basically that the cost of this electrolyte, as used in batteries, has gone up by 50% over the past 12 months. Is that right?
In the last 5 years, the
5 years.
cost of fluorine, yes, the cost
Yeah.
of electrolyte. The fluoride, it's the fluoride side of electrolyte, not the lithium side. The lithium side still dominates 90, it still constitutes 90%
Of the
of the
cost.
cost of the
Yeah.
electrolyte. But we're not talking about anode and the cathode. We're just talking about the medium.
Yep.
So right now, the lithium to fluorine cost ratio is about 90 to 10. But if you were to go to a sodium alternative, then the
It'll
cost
double.
could potentially go down to 4 to 1.
Yep.
And then if fluorine price were to double from here, then I think that people will start looking for a substitute. But we're not quite there yet, Sam.
The best way basically to try and take advantage of this demand, there will be a huge demand. Demand for lithium is going up, but it looks like to me there's so many lithium mines opening and producing so much lithium that I don't see that as a good investment. So how do people actually
No,
invest in fluorspar? Like what are you suggesting?
the only way to go is investing fluorspar mines, and
Mm,
especially you want to, as you know, that especially with the focus in the United States,
yep.
because you're looking at very protective policies of, I mean, Trump is not just going after steel, aluminum, but they're going after copper as well, talking about having a 50% tariff on copper. And U.S. government is pouring hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe up to billions of dollars into rare earth. And so I think the focus should be on for United States, especially.
Yep.
And else, the only other place that, unfortunately, Australia doesn't have a whole lot of fluorspar. The country with the biggest fluorspar reserves is China, Mongolia, and China, Mongolia, South Africa, and parts of Mexico.
Mexico.
So the only way to participate in that market is fluorspar. But Sam, you raised a very good point about solar because we still own one of our sister company owns a coal project in Mongolia, so we know about I know energy, a bit about power plants. If you look at the levelized cost of ownership of electricity,
Yeah.
nuclear is top. I mean, it's not nuclear, right? Peak plants, yes, you talked about,
Yep.
they are at the top of the heap because that's talking about on the peak hours, you have to fire up the gas
Yeah.
to provide the power
Yeah.
at the peak hours. They could charge anywhere from 50 cents to a dollar a kilowatt hour. And this
Yeah.
is followed by, say, nuclear. I mean, nuclear, they try to window dress it, but honestly, to build a nuclear power plant nowadays costs you several billion, up to $10 billion. It takes 10 years to get you a gigawatt nuclear power plant. So the
Mm.
cost of nuclear power plant today, if you were to start from brand new, my estimate would be about 30 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour. The
Mm.
cash for and then the next one down the road is coal. Coal is relatively inexpensive to build, but it's expensive, relatively speaking, to run. The levelized cost of ownership, operating cost for a coal-fired power plant is at around 10 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And as you know, Sam, the cost of solar levelized cost is 3 to 5 cents, and it's probably going to go down.
Some tenders have
And
been
so the
2 cents.
yeah,
Yeah.
but you know what? So the key there is, well, it is a little tricky, right? Because solar is only there when when the sun shines.
Yeah.
So the key here is how can you provide a base load for solar? If the hypothesis is true that we can get sodium ion battery cost down $50 a kilowatt hour, then potentially you can build potentially you can level out, average out the increasing availability of solar and treat it as more of a base load with
Yeah.
higher availability. It's a bit of rocket science going to go into it because you can never achieve 80% availability or 95 or 99% availability like that of a nuclear plant. But I think that with supplement of the batteries and the solar, you should be able to get up to 60 to 80%. And the cost of batteries probably three times the cost of solar right now. So I think you can get all in at around less than 10 cents kilowatt hour today.
Yeah. So the demand for batteries is going to skyrocket,
Ginormous.
meaning the demand for other metals is going to skyrocket. And to be honest, it is a thing that I've thought of many times. How do I take advantage of this situation? Because I'm not really. So what are you doing? What's your suggestion?
Yes, a year ago, I was in China marketing our silver story. All I hear from all the Chinese state-owned enterprises is fluorspar. And the answer to your question is buy into fluorspar mining companies. That
Mm.
is really the only way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not like fluorspar you can buy off like of your local shop like you do with a gold coin.
Yeah.
Um, and the situation is so acute, Sam, that Chinese is bought out majority of the fluorspar projects available in Mongolia. They turned from a net exporter of fluorspar in year 2000 to now importing close to 1 million tons of fluorspar from Mongolia and Africa. just to put it in context, the global fluorspar production right now is 10 million tons a year. That's it. So China produces 6 million tons. They're taking all that in. It's not enough. They're going out sourcing another million tons. So what's available to the rest of the world is only 3 million tons. And if you look at the energy production, United States and China were on par with energy production up till about 2008, right before the financial crisis. Now China's energy production is almost three times of that of the United States. And interestingly enough, United States currently consumes about 500,000 tons of fluorspar. China, Sam, consumes 14 times more. If the United States is to become steel independent, aluminum independent, energy independent, of which they have to double the energy output in order to accommodate all the artificial intelligence, and then you got to build new power plants, solar plants, and then come the energy storage market associated with that.
Mm.
All of these elements in batteries, in solar plant, uranium, and AI, and the chips, and steel, aluminum. My estimation is that the United States on this trajectory is going to have to require 5 times more fluorspar than they're burning today. And the world does not, ex China and Mongolia, they don't have that much production, and
Ah,
the production is inelastic for fluorspar because it's, as I mentioned, it's not like you can shovel it, right? You can put a shovel and take it out. And the reason I know that is, Sam, the Chinese are buying fluorspar projects in Mongolia with a resource of 1 million tons, 500,000 tons,
mm.
right? So they will need 20, and this is reserved. So usually, the a mine's optimal output will be about 5 to 10% of the reserve.
Yep.
So they're buying production, let's say at 10 to 50,000 tons per year. So they have to accumulate or amass 20 or 30 of those projects in order for them to
Ah,
increase their
okay.
fluorspar supply by 10 or 15%.
Yep.
So that's why I'm very, very bullish at fluorspar. And that's why, Sam, we spent almost a year in scouring through fluorspar project with particular emphasis in the United States. The catch is that the last time United States produced fluorspar was 50 years ago.
Oh,
And it was very difficult for us to find these historical licenses that being mostly putting trust from their grandparents, that was just sitting there dormant. And so we're able to get this project, which is the only fluorspar deposit with a historical fluorspar resource, about 1 million tons. There's no other mining companies listed in the North American Exchange that has a fluorspar project with a resource, historical or current. If you look at the Australia landscape, there's only one or two Australian companies with a fluorspar mineral resource.
yep.
One of them just joint ventured with Sumitomo, and I'm in Japan right now. And
Mm.
so we are talking only a handful of fluorspar projects available in North America and in Australia. There are few in South Africa, but you got all the black empowerment. It's got a lot of issues associated with it, and they're not in publicly listed companies. So I think we're talking on a very ground level. I would have known about it, Sam, if I hadn't gone to China and see what's happening there, and seeing the sort of ultra competitive eagerness to amass fluorspar resources.
John, while you're talking, I'm trying to catch up with what you're saying. Are you saying that you have a mine in the United States that's mining fluorspar?
Yes, we just acquired the CleanTech CTV, used to be called Flying Nickel, as you recall, formerly known as the Flying Nickel. So
Yep.
we take the proceeds of which the nickel project we sold, we acquired this fluorspar deposit, and that's
Oh,
in Kentucky, Illinois. It's never been mined before, but it has had over 60 drill holes. So it'll be equivalent of several $1 million of exploration on this project.
right. So basically, you've discovered it in this area, your mining company,
Yes.
and you're saying you found how big is the deposit?
Because it has 60 drill holes and historical resources not bring up to JORC compliant or 43101 Canadian standards, it has about close to 1 million tons of calcium fluoride resource in the ground.
And what's that worth?
At today's money, it's about $100 million. So because CAF2 is 30% grade, like we talked about, it has to
Yeah.
upgrade it to 90%. And a ton of fluoride right now is $450 a ton.
Yep.
So you're looking at around 300,000 tons of recoverable fluorspar and about $400 a ton. So you're looking at about $120 million. And this is the part, Sam, I don't quite understand in that $120 million for a resource deposit is not it's not a large scale size because
Yeah,
as you know, you talk about a coking coal project, right? You got like 300 million tons, right? 500 million tons, a billion tons at a very similar price per ton, comparatively speaking. So, but this is the nature of the beast. And we were looking for hunting for elephant. But what we realize is there is not an elephant out there in the world. There is not like a fluorspar project has 100 million tons of resource and can produce you 1 million or 2 million tons of fluorspar that would satisfy in the entire demands of the United States, and it doesn't exist. There
okay.
are some in South Africa that could have that potential,
Yep.
but that geopolitical risk and then sort of just infrastructure required to have that sizable project is another story to be told.
So your company then, are they mining anything else? Or is this the main project you're working on?
Right now, the company is called CleanTech CTV. The symbol is CTV on the TSX Ventures. The flagship project is the vanadium project. So it started out with critical minerals in
Yep.
vanadium and nickel. We
Yep.
sold the nickel. We spent $30 million. We permitted the project in vanadium project that's in Nevada. But vanadium prices are low right now, as you're probably well aware. So that is sitting on care and maintenance. And now we're just deploying the capital from the proceeds of the nickel sales into fluorspar in this particular district. So the two sort of verticals are fluorspar in Kentucky as
Yep.
well as vanadium in Nevada.
So vanadium redox flow batteries. It seems to me that they are, for a few years, things were slow, but recently there's been some big deployments of those batteries in a few different countries. Do you see demand? I personally think demand for vanadium will increase significantly because those batteries, I mean, they last a lot longer than lithium batteries and sodium batteries. So the cost over the lifetime could actually be significantly lower. How do you see that market playing out?
Well, Sam, vanadium is $4 a pound,
Yep.
and it's gone up to as high as $40 a pound.
So it's very low right now.
When Yeah, it's very low, right? But even low right now at $4 a pound is still relatively expensive compared to say sodium, for example.
True.
And vanadium price is the same as nickel, right? And nickel is being replaced by sodium.
Yep.
The advantage, as you mentioned, of vanadium batteries is that vanadium is the only transition metal that can lose up to 3 electrons, actually up to 5 electrons, and still V plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 and still be very stable.
Yep.
So the advantage is that you have vanadium that's common across the electrolyte, the anode and the cathode, so it doesn't get degraded over time. But the disadvantage is that because vanadium is expensive, vanadium is a volatile metal.
Yep.
So and when I'm meeting here with the Japanese potential partner, they said vanadium at $4 is too expensive. Um, I think the on the other side though, China produces 60% of the vanadium. So most of the large scale deployment batteries, when you're talking about 300 to 500 megawatt hour batteries, most of them is out of China. Everything else is in Japan, in Australia, in parts of California. These vanadium redox flow batteries are in the size of between 10 to 100 megawatt hours.
Yeah.
I don't see that change. I just cannot see a scenario where you will spend. I think, relatively speaking, if you deploy a sodium ion battery, the
Yeah.
cost of that compared to vanadium will probably be 10 to 20% of a vanadium battery.
Yep.
However, one of the interesting point is what you're seeing today is the consumers or the government is looking for a package solution in terms of availability.
Yep.
So I think they have a greater emphasis in continued baseload and ensuring that you have a very stable supply of power over a very high availability up to 95%. And the way they achieve that, Sam, is through it's almost a mix of cocktails, right? You will have some solar, some farm. So they're designing this as almost an ecosystem, not entirely relying on solar per se. So it's a combination of solar and wind farm and maybe some natural gas. And if you have if you happen to have a fracking nearby, and then you might have a combination of lithium batteries with vanadium flow batteries. And then one of the things also people don't talk a lot about is is the electronic widgetry. Sort of the gadgets are very important because they can calculate and dynamically rebalance the load and storage
Yeah.
and storing and transmitting energy. It's a very, very big industry.
Complicated. Yeah.
As the price of electricity can vary by up to 90% depending on when and
Mm.
when you need it and versus when you're not needed. So sometimes electricity could be given for free. No, and nobody wants it, but sometimes they really need it. So I think that electronic element of it is also very important. I don't see vanadium play out
Okay.
in that very enormous quantity because it's just the basic elements of making a battery is too expensive. However, the caveat though is there's been talk about leasing vanadium there's been talk of that for a long time. So what I mean by that is the cost of financing a coal-fired power plant, you can finance up to 30, 50 years because they know that's the life of a power plant. Same
Yep.
with vanadium battery. The advantage of that is it's not degraded easily and doesn't degrade over time. You can hold 100% of the charge and release 100%. Is that there ought to be financing companies and banks that would be willing to finance a 30-year vanadium batteries with the
Yeah.
vanadium electrolyte as the collateral because that could be theoretically recycled 100%. So,
Yep.
but that touches the ongoing. We just haven't seen this sort of economics or financing package available to vanadium batteries as opposed to say a traditional nuclear or coal-fired power plant with a 30, 40-year mine life
So, as
timeline.
you said before, sodium-ion batteries appear to have the cost benefit. The energy density has gone up significantly over the last, say, 18 months from about 100 watt hours per kilogram to about 140, 150, and that appears to be rising.
Yes.
At this point in time, more than 90% of the world's battery production is lithium, but CATL is saying they can reduce costs by 30% by going to sodium. So right now, sodium is a tiny fraction of global percentage, but I see that rising enormously. What would you say in 10 years? Where would we be?
Sam, I believe that the first tackle, the lowest hanging fruit for sodium ion battery is to penetrate into the energy storage because
Yeah,
energy storage is
agree.
not concerned about energy density, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as Elon Musk said, if you can build a solar farm in corner in Utah, and that's enough that's enough electricity for the entire United States. So I see that a perfect marriage between SIB batteries, SIB and solar farms. So I think that's the first area to tackle. And then in terms of sodium ion batteries for electric vehicles, I think that would be a function of a lithium battery cost versus sodium battery cost, right? I mean,
mm,
the proposition for sodium battery is not as compelling as opposed to lithium, say now versus say 2 years ago when lithium was trading at double the price it is today, and so
true.
it might be longer to catch up,
Yep.
but you never know because I thought that MSCA 11 had about a 5 year window to live, and how fast do we know that FP used to be thinking Volkswagen of the world, and now they're in majority over half of of the EV battery. So difficult to tell how fast does SIB can penetrate the EV market, but for sure they are building gigawatts of energy storage with sodium ion batteries.
Would you say that, say, 10 years from now, sodium might take up 30% of the global battery market?
Well, I think it's entirely possible, maybe even
Yeah.
faster. I mean, if it's difficult to say. I am not like an EV car battery guru, but
It's not about being a car
yeah,
guru. You understand the dynamics of the market more than anyone else I've met. So, how do you see this playing out?
I mean, you can set aside solid state batteries. That's something we've been talked about, and Toyota's been talking about. And you also got to talk
Yeah,
about hydrogen cells. That's again, right? That they
yeah.
said they like by this time next year. So I think we're set. If we're talking strictly on liquid state batteries, the ion, the cathode and the anode. As I mentioned, I don't see the comeback of manganese or cobalt or nickel for cathode, and then anode is graphite setting stone, and I don't think you can go cost lower than sodium because you can
Yeah,
do reverse osmosis of which you can get unlimited amount of sodium from seawater.
yeah,
So I think the
yeah.
battery technology is mostly been cracked.
Mm.
And because the chemistry of fluorine, it'll be very hard to find a replacement, if any at all. And Sam, sort of the analogy I want to sort of draw is if you can think of fluorine as being the Victoria's Secret model, right? It's the most exotic secret model that even can make the nerdiest nerd, blink an eye. So that is an ideal candidate when you're talking about having to sort of unwound uranium from its oxide or to stabilize an electrolyte to be married to a positive ion. So
Sure.
it has found some very unique attributes of which is it cannot be matched by other elements in the periodic table. And so I see the electrolyte for liquid batteries, the electrolyte de facto by far none. Uh, in terms of cost and performance, the fluorspar market has a long way to go.
So you're saying then that solid state batteries are unlikely to take any significant market share within the next 10, 15 years. I think they won't. I think maybe a 5% maximum. Well, what are your thoughts?
No, no, man. I read quite about it. The issue with I mean, obviously the advantage of solid state batteries is able to hold a lot more charges, but the issue is with conductivity, right? And so that is area that I don't know very well. But
Mm.
then I mean, what if you can get the sodium SIB cost to down to $50 kilowatt hour? I mean, how much like where it's gonna go,
You're
right?
saying at the pack
Um,
level, not at the,
yeah.
because I mean, lithium iron phosphate's already at $55 per kilowatt hour at the cell level. But some people are projecting sodium ion could get down to, some people are saying it could get down to $10 per kilowatt hour, which seems extreme. What do you think? Not possible?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that if I think sodium is giving lithium the run for the money. If you can get down to more, a factor of half,
Yep.
and also there's abundance of lithium. Like I said, we're the battery tech is getting down to elements, is down to the basement level, and
Yep.
and and really the cost is how do you manufacture on mass quantity, right? How scalable are those deployment? Sam, I'm a very big fan of Tony Seba as you are.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a couple of caveats, right? In that in that I do like 3 4 years ago when I came on your program, we talked about the plateau of auto production. I think it's plateau at around 100 million units a year. It's not going to go higher. And with robo taxis and all this trumpet, I think the utilization of cars right now, I think according to Tony, is about 10 to 20% or
Yeah.
maybe lower than that. And that I think the utilization is going to go way up, and which means the car ownership is going to go way down.
Yeah.
I own two cars. I don't even drive anymore, right? And
Mm.
and the taxi rates can go down up to 70, 80% from where we are today because drivers, our labor cost is the biggest single factor.
Exactly.
And I was
Yeah.
in China, 50% electric vehicle, 50%, maybe even more, are all electric.
Yeah.
And there's already rolling out of robo taxis in Wuhan that's taken a million, tens of millions of rides. I do think Tesla's robo taxi is the way to go because the Waymo has like the cost to retrofit a Waymo car is hundreds over $100,000.
Yeah.
And I know the technology right now with digital lidar by Tesla is may not work 100%, but if you have to install all the different gadgets for it to work, right, it's just not going to be scalable.
Mm.
Interestingly, in the end, what we're talking about is energy production and energy storage, and it's a fascinating topic. I think there's other couple of channels that talk about that in particular. Is I watched the channel by Joe Rogan and Christopher Dunn. I highly recommend saying you watch it.
Okay.
This guy's been studying the pyramid a lot, and he theorizes, he speculates that energy pyramid is actually an energy generation device, and that is a combination of microwave. So they're capturing photons from the Earth, and then they have a chamber that detonate the Earth energy. So it's a combination of microwave technology together with vibration energy to generate electricity, and then this electricity can then transmit wirelessly by
Yeah.
Nikola Tesla's technology. And so that's why you see this
Mm.
pyramid structure in the Antarctica, in the North Pole, in Mexico, in all the different other places. So it's a fascinating theory, and it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, if we can harness the kind of frequency and the microwave and then the vibration of the Earth, look at the destruction that earthquake can do, and look at the bridges, right? When the frequency matches, I mean, that's an enormous amount of energy that can be unleashed. And so I think that solar energy is only the starting of it. Before you know, I think Sammy, before in our lifetime, you're going to see massive abundance of energy, and we're entering into
Yep.
a renaissance, much like Tony Seba was talking about. I am a firm subscriber. I mean, you have the regulation. I mean, it's a bit shocker, right? In Australia, where you are right now, you're paying 30, 40 cents kilowatt hour when you have the most solar energy, most
Yeah.
resources, most nuclear, and yet the politicians are up bundling all this natural resources. But I do think we're going to be entering a renaissance era where a combination of artificial intelligence, robotics, and energy makes an idea come into fruition very seamless. So it makes the ownership of something, valuation of ownership of an asset to be questioned. Because
Mm.
now, if you have an idea and you conceptualize it and you implement it, it's the cost and the time of that implementation that makes the asset worthwhile. But
Mm.
then, if you have an idea, you can implement quickly with the help of AI, with an abundance of energy and robotics, then we're entering into a nirvana world of bliss.
Mm.
I think in our lifetime, Sam, you can print a 3D house in like a week at
Yeah.
the cost of fraction of things, right? And if you can have an idea like the cars, taxis, free. I mean, we're entering into an incredible era.
So I read an article yesterday saying the Chinese robotaxi market, it's worth, I can't remember the billion-dollar figure, but they said that it's going to explode by approximately 10,000% over the next 10 years, meaning a market growing to $500 billion a year. That is huge. And you're saying you think that Tesla has an opportunity to take part of that market. Do you think that?
Difficult to I think the problem with the abundance of technology is the profit margin raises to zero because the barriers to entry is zero. Not only robotaxi, if you think about so you're talking about Uber, right? And but you're talking about food delivery service.
Yeah.
That's another service, right? And if think about if the power is free, so everything that requires power as their core cost of doing business is going to go down. Then restaurants, supermarkets, you talking a lot of different things, even agriculture. This is sort of beyond our topic conversation. I haven't given a lot of thought to it, but I was saying, oh my God, just about everything facets of industry that you touch, the cost of that can go quite dramatically down. And that's why there's a race towards land grabs, right? Towards patents and towards those technology. But I do think that Elon has an opportunity to capture the energy market, and I think that's a bigger market to go after.
Yeah.
Which is a good point. So I love to sort of it's a fascinating topic. Is you were talking about Honda and Toyota being sort of a dinosaur in the EV
Yeah.
market. I see it differently. I just don't see
Okay.
how Honda can ever compete with the BYD. And I see the mechanical, so the ICE is going to resort back to, there's a scarce of mechanical watches, right? When the quartz watch came on. And I think we're entering a similar era. I don't think the ICE is going to die, but the ICE is going to resort back to that special niche, maybe 10 or 20 million cars a year, and where people are buying them, like you and I, the diehards, not because we want to go from A to B faster or we want to go from A to B cheaper, not just because we like the thrill and the experience of riding an ICE with the A-cylinder with the sound coming from the engine and not to be made or synthesized. And that is, I think, where Honda needs to go is to go to the mechanical watch equivalent. You cannot compete with the Casio, right? I mean, that's like compete with the Huawei cell phone. I mean, the Sony's try that; it's not gonna work. So, at the
To look
most, maybe Toyota and Honda can rebrand
to look
some
at
of
your
these IC. Yeah.
John, to look
Mhm.
at your analogy though, mechanical watches make up about 1% of the market, not 10 to 20. So if they were to
Yeah.
do that, here's the problem. Let's say 10% of cars were petrol powered in, say, 10, 15 years, 10% of the new market. And then by 2040, the global fleet is mostly electric. The problem with the economics is this, that transporting fuel becomes more and more expensive. There's less gas stations, less petrol stations, and those petrol stations, all of a sudden, their market goes down enormously. Robotaxis are never going to be powered by petrol. If that market blows up, that puts further pressure on that market. And then all of a sudden, you're thinking to yourself, okay, if I have an internal combustion car, where do I put fuel in it? I can't charge that at my house. I can't. it becomes the opposite, where it becomes like the early EV days where you're thinking, where am I going to? But even in the early EV days, you could at least go to someone's house or your own house and charge your car. Now you won't have that choice unless someone just has a petrol station at their house or a gas station at their house. So in terms of that, I think that it's going to be a virtuous cycle for EVs and the opposite for internal combustion. But I get what you're saying. I agree it'll be a niche. Lamborghinis and Ferraris, that will still exist, but it still will be a tricky scenario for them to say, well, I've got to go from here to here. Do I need to refuel?
You're absolutely right. And if you were to buy a Patek Philippe watch, right, and then you have to service every 6 months, even in aware,
They are
it's a market I
expensive.
don't study too much, but I
Yeah.
do. I mean, if you talk about Honda and Toyota competing on EV with the Chinese, I think it's an absolute dead end.
Yeah.
As you on your channel, you talked about the
Yeah.
BYDs. For a tenth of the price of a Bugatti, you have all the amenities and the same performance and
Mm.
the exotic looks and the same reliability. I just cannot see how the Japanese could compete. There
Compete.
is
Yeah.
not a differentiable advantage, and maybe the market is just not going to be there, and they're going to have to come up with something else in the transportation industry. And I think electric vehicle is only one. You're looking at in Saudi Arabia and the parts already talking about taxi, right? Electric. I mean,
Yeah.
there's all the if the batteries is lighting up and so there's also the air the sort of the air taxis that is available. It's fascinating, but I just don't see. I think by 2040 the world car auto production is probably likely to be halved,
Yeah.
and that's an optimistic.
Agree.
That's optimistic,
Yeah.
huh?
And it's interesting when you say that. I agree with what you're saying because right now, the Chinese car companies have the best tech. They do. They have 1,000 kilowatt charging. They have the ability to make their own batteries. They have factories that are streamlining. Like Toyota doesn't have a single EV production line in the world. They got multi-production lines. So the efficiency is really low. And if you combine that with the Chinese are willing and have proven it time and time again, they will sell below cost for as long as it takes to get rid of you.
Yes,
So if they have the best technology and the most efficient production and they're willing to sell below cost, how do you exist? It's only a matter of time. So John,
I agree.
your company is listed on the stock exchange.
It's on the Toronto Ventures Exchange. The symbol is CTV, and
Yep.
over the counter for international investors, and the symbol is CTVFF. Just a quick plug, Sam. This district of which we purchased the project, it was put in a trust, and the old fella passed away. It is a historical fluorspar producing belt in the United States. And there's over 30 projects of various degrees of exploration and exploitation. So this is only our first foray into the fluorspar space.
Yep.
Because my people are like, why would you be like you have vanadium project that's 400 million pounds, right? And yeah, you have this fluorspar project that's not even a tenth of your vanadium project. Why would you be interested in such a small scale project? I think my answer to that is it just got the particular niche and that it's just not these projects very small, very segregated. So we're in the right zip code and we're in the right address. And I really do believe that I think before the end of the Trump's this administration in the next 3 years' time, you're going to see a very concerted approach in promoting fluorspar into production in the United States. And it's almost akin, my analogy would be, it's almost like Robin to the Batman, right? Fluorspar. People talk about semiconductor. Okay, we need to invest in a fat plan. TSMC, come here, build a plan, right?
Mm.
And the same with batteries. Okay, you need nickel. Okay, we're gonna subsidize a nickel smelter. Okay, you need a battery. Okay, I'm forced you to build a battery, and then also steel and aluminum production. Okay, you need to build a steel aluminum smelter. And but all of that Batman, you need a Robin. So people are not thinking just one step ahead and thinking that where is the Robin that's going to be needed to make the Batman to work. Another one is if you're into basketball, it would be like the Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan, right? And where is the Scottie Pippen? And this is the same with rare earth. That's exactly the same with rare earth. Rare earth needs for magnets, need for, but it's an unsung hero until you don't get enough of it, and all of a sudden your production line comes to a screeching halt. And that's the thing I'm saying. It's almost like you know what, United States and Australia industry, it's almost like they're ordering commodities like they're ordering pizza from Pizza Hut, right? It's
Mm.
like, okay, I need cobalt. I give a code to Glencore. I give a code to Trafigura. That's it's kind of like they turn on the switch and expect electricity to come. That's their mentality. They're like, okay, Glencore, right? I need 50 tons of fluorspar tomorrow, right? Or Trafigura, I need 1 billion pounds of cobalt. Or they will call a rare earth distributor, Sumitomo, right? I need 2 tons of rare earth tomorrow. And the problem with these traders, because I work with the traders, is they're not going to say no, because if the minute they say no, then they know that the apples, right, will just call it the next trader, right?
Yeah.
Today's Trafigura, tomorrow's Transamine, the day after. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and they're all going to say yes. But the problem is music chair. They're always hoping that they're going to always sell 10 tickets to 7 seats available, and then at the back end they're going to start scramble to fill up that quota, because they all know that the commodity cycle goes cyclical, the economies go up and down. Every time you order something or reserve something, you sometimes drop the orders and whatnot. But I think if you look at the trajectory of Fluorspar, it went
Mm.
from 5 cents a pound. That's top pound. That's easier. 5 cents a pound in early 2000 to 10 cents a pound
Mm.
in to 2010. Takes 10 years, and from 10 cents a pound to it takes another 10 years for Fluorspar to double. But in the last 3 years, it's already went to almost 50%. So you're seeing that curve steepening. Almost of that is entirely driven by energy storage, probably most driven by sodium fluoride battery, as well as for energy storage, as well as for lithium batteries. And I don't see that trend going down. I mean, you still got India, you still have many parts of the world of which Chinese markets penetrating. You talked about Mexico and Brazil. The BYD growth in Brazil exploded, right? I think it's at the infancy. If the auto prices continue to go down, and as you also talked about the issues with BYD, they got tens of millions of older technology generation EVs are parked in their parking lot. I don't say that's an issue. I think it's a bad matter of a clearance price of which get rid of the inventory, and they will.
Yeah.
And it's the technology inventory is going to continue to grow,
So
and everything's just going to get better and cheaper.
getting back to your project though, do you, a few questions. One, can you get subsidies from the US government? Two, do you have approval to remove the stuff from the ground? And three, do you have the funding necessary to make the whole project happen?
Right. If you look at the throughput, 1 million ton in reserve for the size of this project, a sort of a typical output would be about 50,000 tons, 30 to 50,000 tons a year. So that single mine today would account for up close to 10% of the US demand today. Trying to get money from the government is almost try to pull the teeth from a patient. It's very bureaucratic. It's very entrenched, and so it's definitely possible. There's another project that received some funding from the state on the state level. We try to get some vanadium grants, also for some grants for our nickel project in the past. With our experiences, it's very difficult. It's almost like you have to put 30 cents for every dollar you're trying to
Um,
get from the
okay.
application, the lawyer, the lobbying, the waiting, the studies, and the just a lot of work that we put into it. We're not. I do believe it's going to happen because the government is putting over $1 billion into Rare Earth Initiative. We're hearing right now. They're literally how it works with the government, Sam. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of central planning. It's almost like they're just wandering around. It's kind of like how Brazilian play football, right? They don't play like Germany where you attack sort of yard by yard. It's just like they wander around to the point. Is okay, now it's time for attack. Like they go to the panic mode. All of a sudden, you can draw an application on a napkin, and they're going to give you money. We're not quite there yet
Mm.
for SPAR. They have a various degree of eagerness to dish out money, and right now they're going after 100% rare earth.
Mm.
But I think they're going to come to a four spar, which is one of the 34 critical minerals on the periodic table. And fluorspar is going to be needed for all the space age alloys and airplanes require aluminum and steel. And then if you look at semiconductors, TSMC is going to knock on the
Yeah.
door very quickly once their fab plant goes into production. Or if Tesla needed his FAP battery in the US started needing fluoride for electrolyte, and then when they call the traders, Glencore, who sources fluorspar from China, says it's not available, then they're going to come to that epiphany very, very quickly. In terms of permitting, we have good experience in permitting. This particular project is on private land in the United States. And there is a very big difference. If the project sits on the U.S. government land, then that would be under the jurisdiction of what they call the Bureau of Land Management (BLM). Then you're looking at a slew of studies, over 20, 30 of them. And then all the weight of historical lawsuits, presidents, civil movement, NGOs, challenges, legals, and blocking, and all that will come into play. It will take about 5 to 10 years to permit a mine from grassroots if the project is sitting on federal land. So we're very fortunate that the mineral sits on the private land. There are still, although some permits we have to acquire from the state of Kentucky, that is under study. They're not opposed to mining. However, the last time they have a sizable mining project was 50 years ago. There is some rules on fracking and oil and gas production, of which is active in Kentucky. So we have to somewhat mirror that and liaise with the government. I think the upside though is the area is still it's very prospective, but we're the only one or two people that are scouting for the project. So you would not be surprised to see additional acquisitions by CleanTech in the weeks and months to come. And our sort of our objective is not so eager to go into production, but to secure as many quality fluorspar projects in this district that's near infrastructure, relatively low capex for production, and then find a partner. I think the ideal partner would be something like Tesla because they need energy production, they need energy storage, they have steel they need for their Cybertruck, and they have robotics that need it for their semiconductors, and they have Grok, the AI that needs also NVIDIA chips. So I think the ideal partner would be something like Tesla. To get a mine to production, you're looking at about $30 to $50 million range. Approximately 30% of that, 10 to 15 million, will be commissioned in the mining aspect of into production, and then the other 70%, about 30 to 40, 25 to 30 million, will be building the processing plant to upgrade to concentrate that calcium fluoride from 20 to 30% to up to 70 to 90%.
So you're saying for mining to go ahead, there's still a fair few things that need to happen.
Right.
Yep.
It's going to take probably 2 years, I would say, on a conservative, just to dig the stuff out of the ground. And
Yep.
then it's going to take about 2 years to build the processing plant to upgrade the rocks, the dirt, right, into a commercial marketable material. Now, the two can go in parallel. You can start digging and start building the plant, or we can start digging and then looking at surrounding plants that might have been abandoned or that can be retrofitted to handle, because the concentration technology is very standard. It's not anything exotic. It's not you have to put some very exotic pressurization, or it's not like high pressurization acid heap leach like some of these Australian nickel oxide projects, right? So it's none of that nature. So it's
Yep.
fairly conventional flotation. But I would say from today, even if we're say the most aggressive to put this mine in production, would be about 2 to 3 years, and we required about 50 million. Our market cap, when last time we kind of showed to talk about nickel, we're over 100, but because of the nickel correction, we're down to $4 million market cap, which is we're trading our cash value. That's why I'm so eager, Sam, to get onto your program, because
Yep.
we're $4 million market cap valuation. We have $3 million in the bank. We have a vanadium project. We spent over $30 million in permitting, in drilling, in studies. It took 7 years, and we just acquired for this fluorspar project. So you're getting all of that net of cash for $1 million.
I see. Yeah. So
Company traded quite good, several million shares. I think just a lot of nickel bulls throwing the towel. They see liquidity, and they don't understand the force by market. The first impression, Sam, with maybe even your audience would be, why would I care about this industrial minerals I never heard about, right? All I hear about fluorspar is in my dental paste, it's being fluoridated water, but they don't understand that
yeah.
it plays an essential role in energy storage, in energy production, and also in steel and aluminum production, and as well in semiconductors. And that's why logically, when I hear now, I understand why the Chinese were so motivated, and because Chinese, depending on the study that you read, the Chinese only has between 50 to 80 million tons of calcium fluoride reserves. They're churning up today 6 million tons. So we're talking in less 10 years time,
Mm.
the industries of the industrial machines of China will be shut down without fluorspar.
You
They're in
have
an extremely acute situation. Yes,
so you have $3 million in cash in the bank, and the project would need $50 million. Is that right?
yes.
Would you be able to get the funding to do that, or do you have to get a partner to come in?
Well, obviously not. The interesting thing about junior exploration company is they oscillate between the pendulums, right? Between the extremes. On one end, on the lowest extreme side, they say, well, you don't have cash. Your company is 10 people, geologists and marketer. You don't have operation. You don't have machines. You don't have equipment. And how could you put a 50 million mine into production when your market cap is 1/10 of that and you don't have the know-how to put the mine into production? And that's what we are today because nobody has it's a very risk averse in the fluorspar market. I would say risk reverse. It's just ignorant. It's undercovered. But Sam, the same story for nickel, where we went from 10 million to 100 million. So
Mm.
on the other end of the extreme is, wow, if you can get the four spot out of the ground for $10 a pound, you process it for another $10. So your margin, and you process it and then you upgrade it. So the margin is, oh my God, for $50 all in, you can get it to an end product. You can sell it for $500. And then if you can do 50,000 ton per year, you'll be netting $25 million a year. At today's Wolfsmart price, if what's gold doubles, you'll be making $100 million a year. And you're telling me, John, you only need $50 million to put mine into production, so your IRR is 100%, right? So I think it does sort of the action. That's why the nature and the beast of this junior mining sector is sometimes you can get a 10 or 20 bagger when people wake up to, when people reach that epiphany moment, and then all of a sudden you get to that critical mass. Then if Elon Musk were to come in and say, John, I will give you $50 million, right, for first 2 years of your offtake. And 3 years from now, that's okay. Just get the mine to production, and I'm gonna reserve. I'm gonna prepay half of the floor spot purchase in the next 3 years upfront, and then I'll pay you remainder half of it when you actually dig the product out of the ground, deliver the product to me. So this is called the prepaid
Mm.
offtake financing. So there's very different innovative way of putting a mine into production.
Okay.
Equity obviously is the most dilutive and most expensive form, but depending on the partner, depending on the stage of the project, depending on the economics of the project, the pendulum can quite easily swing the other way.
Batteries that General Motors, Tesla, Panasonic, LG Energy Solutions that they produce in the United States, are they using fluorspar currently?
If you're going to produce a battery today, like a lithium battery, CATL, Panasonic, they absolutely have to have fluorspar, right?
Yep.
Your question to me is, does GM have fluorspar or does Ford have fluorspar? The answer varies depending on what do you mean by definition of ownership. Because during the nickel days, Sam, because we sold the nickel already project already, the NDA already expired. We talked to GM, we talked to Renault, we talked to Nissan, we talked to Toyota, we talked to Ford, and they all, unfortunately, as I mentioned to you, they rely on it's almost how to what level of due diligence you want to do. So not everybody is like Elon Musk, where he will call Indonesia or call Valley and say, the actual down to the bottom level and say, I want to secure this much nickel. Because what Tesla or Elon Musk is doing is it is actually helping out. He already seeing that the bottleneck of the Panasonic and CATL, they're going to run to the bottleneck of procuring the source material required to fulfill their contract to Tesla. So Elon Musk is going one step ahead and making sure that the critical supply chain is not interrupted. I don't believe that GMs and the Fords and the Hondas and Toyotas are going to the extent and say, oh my God, the CATLs and Panasonic is going to run out of electrolyte fluoride in 2 years. And they're relying on their standard outsourcing, right? So there's a level of indirects. I don't think have done their due diligence. Sam, you know how I know that? Because I'm in Japan right now, and they're not sweating. Japanese are they're very patient, but they don't understand. But I see incredible urgency from the Chinese that I have never seen in my 25 years of career in mining. I am talking to Mongolian right now, and they say, John, they're all gone. I'm talking to the Chinese who's offering me $30 million to buy a fluorspar project, and we were offering $2 to $5 million. I didn't believe that, Sam, because I saw you're Mongolian, right? Until after we put in the news release in July the 2nd of the purchase of our project in Kentucky, we had a fellow Australian reach out to me, retired in Hong Kong, a derivative trader from Merrill Lynch. And he told me, his name is James, he told me, John, I am so glad you came on board because I watched your interview on another channel, a Tesla channel, Sam. And he said, wow, you're the first person that I watched who gets fluorspar. He bought his Tesla Roadster in 2011 and he studied the market. He chose not to invest in lithium. He chose not to invest in cobalt and nickel. Instead, he invested 14 years ago in fluorspar. He went to Mongolia. He bought 10 projects. And James told me that sometimes you being early and being wrong seem the same. And in the last 9 months, he sold 6 of his 10 fluorspar projects for over $15 million, Sam. He said he's going to be selling his remainder project for estimated $50 million. He's telling me the Chinese visited Mongolia in 3 days after one site visit, wrote a check.
You think that could happen to you? That someone could come in a few years' time and say, I'm going to give you this much for this?
United States fluorspar more urgent than the Chinese. Chinese has 10 years of fluorspar reserve and has 6 million tons of production. It only runs a deficit about 15% rely on import from Mongolia. United States today does not produce a single ounce of fluorspar, rely entirely on Mexico and China.
Yeah.
Half of the Mexico production go to the United States. The other half of the Mexican production go to South America. And you're looking at a multipolar world where things are all fractioned up. Half the Mongolian production go to Russia because Russia needs it for weaponry. All the drones and all the tanks, right? They all need fluorspar for their steel and aluminum production. So I have no question in my mind that this thing is going to break wide open like rare earth did. So all of a sudden, rare earth is going to be on the front cover page on CNBC. And Sam, you're not even talking about pharmaceutical pills. 20% of pharmaceutical products are fluorspar. It's a different topic for another day. They claim that fluorspar is good for your health. I have a different view on that. And all the herbicide and pesticide have fluorspar. And so you could do a study. Like literally, without fluorspar, the world will come to a screeching halt. That's how important and strategic fluorspar is to all the world economies. And and one other point, Sam, if you think about that thing for a minute, as you know, China is building 1,000 kilovolts high voltage transmission line for up to 1,000, 2,000 kilometers. And so if you're gonna have a solar farm in Nevada and Utah and California, to get the power to Michigan, you have to build high voltage transmission lines. And you have to have fluorspar. Fluorspar is used in the form of sulfur hexafluoride gas, which is a highly insulated gas. You need that insulation gas for your high voltage switches. And that's also up to 10% of the fluorspar usage in these high voltage insulating switches. It's almost like a vacuum switch that you use. And the fluorspar is used for your refrigerant. So if you're talking about modernizing Africa and parts of Southeast Asia, it's the standard use of refrigerant. Fluorocarbon polymer is one of the most stable element because what happened is once fluorspar, which is highly reactive element, combined with polymer, that is the most stable element with a very low boiling temperature. So what happened is when you pump fluorspar liquid into the room, the boiling temperature is -20. So it boils and absorbs the heat from your room. And then once fluorspar gas enters out of the room in the pipe, will be compressed back into the liquid. So this is the technology of how refrigerant works. Refrigerant demand exploded because of the climate change. So that's another added element. So all the different elements of where fluorspar is applied to is been growing exponential. But much less, I think, going back to the central point is the energy storage. I just see the energy SIB in energy storage combined with solar is the way to go. And there's some other channels I think Sam, you can maybe interested to cover is solar cost is going to go down further because one of the biggest concern is the recycle and the lifetime of a solar panel.
Yep.
But now they're talking about you can implement electronics and you just literally infuse fluorine gas and it will recycle and
You
then
can reuse
etch
the same panel. Yep.
yes, the panel over and over again.
I've seen
So
that.
that is the
Yeah.
biggest advantage. Guess what you're gonna need? You're gonna need fluorspar. That is the gas that would take away all the debris and clear all the gas. And the coating of all the wind farms, the coating of the solar panels is fluorocarbon because it is most durable, protective film in all those covers for solar panels and for wind farms. So literally, how do I know this? I literally just go fluorspar in wind farm, fluorspar in solar. It's literally everything that you need is solar. That fluoride plays as such a critical element, and that's why I don't see the way fluoride the pattern and the price. I think the price action goes like this, right? So it's not like a yo-yo action like vanadium or like nickel. I just because of its multifaceted usage, I don't see it going down. And if you look at the global reserves versus demand, it is going to take some time. It's very price inelastic. It's going to take some time to bring that additional reserves and production on stream. So we are very excited about this prospect. And I think just the valuation, the Mongolian valuation is about 5 times the valuation in the US, which doesn't make any sense. It just shows that the US investor base is still much asleep. Usually the pattern is Chinese caught up first, then Australians, and then United States. I think lithium is a good example, right? And I mean, lithium was a lot popular a lot sooner than before it got caught up in the US. And same with vanadium. I think vanadium valuation for Australian outfits were a lot higher and a lot earlier, caught up the wave much earlier than the US. I think it started on 2015, 2018. It was until 2018, 2019 that the Canadian and US caught up to vanadium. So, there is that window of which arbitrage that your audience and investor can really look into. I mean, we're buying assets in prime jurisdiction in the United States for half the price of we would have gotten in Mongolia. So it's a very interesting opportunity. That's why I'm literally within a week after we acquired the project, 10 days after the project, I reached out to you because I found your audience to be very sophisticated and your topics to be very forward-looking and to come on your show and share this exciting opportunity with your people.
Thanks, Sean. Cheers, mate. Good to talk to you.
Yeah.